Good evening and welcome to the week's news in capsule form. That's cyanide capsule, of course. In the news this week, on election walkabout, Paddy Ashdown warns his latest lover to stay out of sight, but her passion is too strong. John Major's election bus goes on a goodwill drive through Brixton to rally grassroots support. And there's an odd moment on Newsnight after someone slips a tab of LSD into Peter Snow's coffee. On Ian Hislop's team, a satirist named John, who started at the Establishment Club in the early 60s and now appears on the Rory Bremner Show, John Fortune. And with Paul Merton tonight, conversely, a satirist named John, who started at the Establishment Club in the early 60s and now appears on the Rory Bremner Show, John Bird. So, a moment's pause for confusion as I ask Ian and John to identify the first bit of footage in our film round. What's the story behind this?
Trade union banners. Oh, there's Tony Blair, and that must be the Clause 4 conference. There's Cherry, fragrant silk. There are some voters.
Less fragrant, probably.
Less fragrant.
Oh, he's nice.
Oh, he's very nice. I like him. Oh, and there's John Major accepting the congratulations for a stunning victory in the council elections.
That's very well done, because we're going out after the result, but we don't know the result.
No, but I think...
It's a good guess, isn't it?
I think it's a very, very good guess.
Yeah.
Tory landslide.
I think so.
Yeah, I think so.
The interesting thing is how many Conservative councillors are not putting Conservative on the voting form next to their names. They're putting things like embarrassed ex-Conservative, but it's not my fault. In fact, one of them in Oxfordshire, he's a Conservative councillor, and he put Labour in the... which actually is pushing it a bit, really.
Wasn't that the Clause 4 thing, to start with, though?
Well spotted, Ian, yes. Nothing gets past you, does it?
Nope. Except points, occasionally.
It's curious the way that Tony Blair occasionally forgets himself and refers to the Labour Party as they. Like they are going to do this, we know. And in moments of great solidarity, he says, you will be.
It's Labour's victory in the local elections, hot on the heels of their rewriting of the all-important Clause 4 of their constitution. During the debate, the two extremes of the Labour Party have been known as the mods and rockers, in much the same way as the two extremes of the Conservative Party are known as the Euro rebels and the wets, and the two extremes of the Liberal Democrats are known as Simon and Jeremy. So united is the new Labour Party that, according to Ken Livingstone, if Tony Blair wanted the entire party to sit naked in Parliament Square for a week to help win the election, we would do it. So who knows, that might bring about a swing to the left after all. John Major called the debate on Clause 4 the biggest attempt to con the gullible since the wolf dressed up as the grandmother in Little Red Riding Hood, which Norma had been reading to him only the night before.
I don't believe that. He would have been scared.
Bit racy for him, really, isn't it? Yeah.
Dressing up in women's clothes, they don't do that in the Tory party.
Margaret Thatcher used to.
Paul and John, who's revolting here?
Oh, this is ornithologists trying to get a glimpse of the sleeping bag bird. It comes... comes to the country once every 15 years and its tog value is always different. M65 extension protesting against.
M65 extension is right, yes.
They want it built quicker. And they're going to keep climbing trees until it is.
It's in Blackburn, isn't it?
It's not actually in Blackburn, it's sort of a bypass to get round.
Yeah, it's in Lancashire,
well, bypasses aren't in places. That's the point of them.
Yes, any idea how much it's costing to the security services?
£455.
It's closer to 2.2 million, actually.
Is it 2.2 million, then?
Yes, it is, exactly.
One of the reasons for that is that they'd have to bring in these vehicles which have hydraulic lifts on top of them so that the men on the lifts can get up to the men in the trees. But the vehicles have got to be small enough to manoeuvre through thick woodland.
See, I didn't realise about those machines, so obviously that would push the cost right up.
Yeah.
From £445.
So close to what, do you think?
Well, I'd probably about 2.2 million, I don't know.
I didn't realise they got paid for knocking these people about. They thought they did it for fun.
There were various skirmishes between protesters and security men. One of the protesters, who calls himself Pete something, said, "We are here because we love nature and all that shit." That was shortly before he had it kicked out of him, of course.
So what he was saying was, we love nature and all that. Shit!
Ian and John, this is the BBC.
Oh, there's the man who runs it. It's a pity. He's filling in his tax return.
And that's Marmaduke Hussey.
Asking what a programme is.
That's the last film they're ever going to make.
It's all over.
What is?
The BBC.
Is it? Oh, that's a bit of a shame.
So, good night.
Yes.
They run out of money.
They ran out of money because they found that they'd mislaid about £20 million. And
Easily
people
done.
in the accounts department were saying, well, you had it last. Sure, I put it. So, because they've lost all this money, they have to employ another load of accountants to try and find where the original accountants
Put it.
And
so-
eventually someone says to John Burt, "Where's the money, Burt?" Or sometimes they change the T.
Where's the money, John Bird?
Yeah.
Yeah!
That seems unfair.
You're well out of it on Channel 4, really, aren't you?
It's certainly well out of the money, that's fair.
Asked why £20 million have been cut from programme budgets, the BBC spokesman said, "These are not cuts, the corporation is rephasing its cash flow." Sounds like a considerable quantity of testicular reproductive glands to me. Paul and John, prepare for takeoff.
Oh, she's an hurry.
This is the air traffic control, isn't it? They're having to cut down on the money they spend on air traffic control, so they're all having to take second jobs. So that man is on his way to his work, talking down this plane.
Yeah.
Not wholly successfully, by the look of it.
If as long as he doesn't go under a bridge, things will be all right.
Yeah.
There's a correlation between people using on things like personal computers on planes and camcorders and even CD players that are interfering with the plane's inner workings, electronics.
And pacemakers.
And pacemakers. And coffee as well.
Yeah.
Coffee affects planes very badly. And tea.
Yes.
But not hot chocolate. I suppose it's one of those quirks that makes life very interesting.
You'd never think it, certainly, that's
Well,
for
I just
sure.
have.
So why do they have all this elaborate equipment when you go into an airport and you have to put everything through one of those machines?
That's to mess up your photos.
Oh, I see.
They can't tell somebody at the check-in desk to take their pacemaker out until they get to Hong Kong.
They could strap it, I don't know, to the top of their heads or something in a lead box.
Yes. One plane's course began to fluctuate wildly after a passenger began playing a Nintendo game. Then, even more disturbingly, a giant gorilla started chasing a plumber along the front wheel. One man on a Garuda Airlines flight found that by pressing various buttons and twiddling a few knobs, he could make the plane veer from side to side in a terrifying manner. Unfortunately, that was the pilot. A slight change of camera angle means that we can now see the scoreboard, showing as it does that both teams are excelling themselves, Ian and John and Paul and John sporting a proud 4. Our standard interlude at this juncture, as we have a brief gawp at our caption competition. Ian and John, feast your eyes on this. Paul and John, this. And so we bid a lukewarm welcome back to our headline round, set as it is in the fetid swamps of the gutter press, by which we this week mean the Times and the Daily Telegraph. Ian and John, unravel this one. Oh, what a tangled web we weave.
Ah.
Oh, actually.
Oh, yeah. It's about spiders on speed and acid. And apparently if you give a spider a lot of drugs, it doesn't make such a tidy web as when it's completely cold sober. Apparently the worst thing you can take if you're a spider is not heroin, which is just makes you go a bit loopy, but coffee.
Except marijuana, because when they gave that to the spiders, they made about half the web and then just gave up.
Yeah.
Sat around, talked absolute rubbish for an hour.
And then went and bought some chocolate from late night petrol station. Thank you.
They started talking like that.
Yes, yeah.
And alcohol wasn't good either, was it?
Not for a spider, no.
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 Sort of very crazy webs.
With that simple mime, he conjured up an extraordinary imaginative picture.
Fantastic.
Crazy webs. That could be like, you could do a programme, Ian Hislop's Tales of the Supernatural. Sitting there in a chair, tonight's episode... I'd watch it.
I wouldn't.
Well, you'd be in it, Ian, wouldn't you?
Don't tell me you don't watch yourself later, Angus, on the video.
Freeze frame.
That suit looked particularly terrible, didn't it?
Well, it looks rather similar to yours, actually, Ian, it has to be said.
Except it's got stripes on and is a different colour.
Yes,
I think it's back to the webs, Angus.
That's the sort of web that a spider creates if you train it to be a tailor for 5 years.
And give it heroin.
And give it heroin.
Who is it that's conducting this research?
Scientists. Boffins.
Eggheads.
You're clunching.
Blokes in white coats.
And why are they doing it? Why are they giving spiders all these drugs?
For a laugh.
They did the same thing on silkworms, and they create all those ghastly shirts that American tourists wear. And they said they could do it with spiders as well.
Are these the tourists who then sell you those shirts?
He doesn't wear those sorts of shirts.
Oh, look at this crazy shirt. Dark webs.
You can have 2 points. It is the research undertaken by NASA in Texas into the effects of various drugs on spiders. The spider on benzodrine, or speed, built its webs quickly but carelessly. The spider on caffeine built its webs erratically. And the spider on crack broke out of the tank, shot 3 researchers and robbed a liquor store in Pasadena. Spokesman for NASA space programme, Jerry Berg, denied that the exercise was frivolous, saying, "This follows a long tradition of using lower life forms wherever possible." I'm not sure how Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin feel about that. Just for your information, this is the spider on marijuana. This is the spider on benzodrine. This is the one on chloral hydrate. And this is the spider formerly known as Prince. Paul and John, tell us about this story. The landlady who spied for Hitler.
Oh, this is an old lady. I know about this. This is an old lady who lived in a shoe. No. This is an old lady who lived in Dorset, I think it was, who, during the war, got herself a reputation as a Nazi spy. She used to go about, and she was found with drawings of gun emplacements on her person. Also, she used to carry around a lot of little swastika badges. So they jumped to the conclusion that she was a Nazi, and...
Do you know why she did this?
Because the British government didn't save her puppy.
Yeah,
It didn't supplement her pension.
No, it was because the British government didn't save her puppy, is the right answer, in fact. Yes, it is the story of the seemingly batty seaside landlady Dorothy O'Grady, who, it's now been revealed, was a fully trained German spy. For years she went undetected thanks to the perfect camouflage of running an innocent little seaside guest house, das Dritte Reich Schloss. When she was arrested, it turns out she tried to kill herself by taking a massive dose of ephedrine hydrochloride. She didn't die, but she did weave some astonishing webs. All of which double dealing marks the halfway point of this particular battle, and the situation is that both teams are about as even as Stevens get, sharing as they do an even 6. Fans of the Odd One Out round can now contemplate suicide as we introduce in its stead this week a brand new variation on the theme, our Celebrity Quango round. As usual, 4 disparate and indeed desperate celebrities, but the question is, which one is the Quango member? A Quango, of course, being a body appointed by the government, which is not elected but has nonetheless the power to influence our lives. Paul's Quango is the Human Fertilisation and Embryology Authority, which rules on the sensitive areas of test tube babies, genetic engineering and cloning. So, Paul, your 4 candidates are Dr. Hilary Jones, the Duchess of York, Tony Blair's wife, Sherry Booth, and Penelope Keith, star of The Good Life.
All right, then, Dr. Hilary Jones, he's known for producing all sorts of children in different circumstances.
And don't forget you heard it here second.
Yes. Duchess of York, she's been cloned. There's hundreds of her all over the world now. None of them doing any work. Sherry Booth, she's got no teeth, so obviously she wouldn't be there. And Penelope Keith is one of our well-respected character actresses, so it's Hilary Jones.
It's Penelope Keith.
Said Ian swiftly. Why?
Because I want the points.
Well, I have to give it to Ian, sadly. He's picked the right one.
Because that's what you get on expert medical committees. You get an actress. As opposed to doctors. Get in someone who's in The Good Life.
Yes, Dr. Hilary Jones, a health expert and specialist in family matters, was not asked onto the Quango due to his inexperience in the area of 1970s sitcoms. Fergie is not a member of this particular Quango, although over the years, of course, she has privately offered herself to several Americans for fertility research. Controversial. John, your Quango is the Advisory Committee for Business and the Environment, formed to prevent the former from fouling up the latter. Which of these sits on it? British gas boss Cedric Brown, Norma Major, Felicity Kendall, and Lord Melchett.
Anybody can get on a Quango, provided they're... I was going to say, provided they're intimate with a Tory MP, so that rules out Norma Major. Lord Melchett runs Greenpeace now, does he not?
He is, yes.
It wouldn't be him, because then he would know something about the environment. I mean, they wanted somebody on the Quango who knows nothing about the environment.
All about business.
Because they need a wide range of expertise, and they need people to speak for those who don't give a shit about the environment. Well, it's not. I wouldn't. I suppose perhaps it is Norma Major. Perhaps it is Norma Major.
No, the man chosen to protect the environment from greedy businessmen is one of 24 businessmen on the Committee of 26, Cedric Brown. As chairman of British Gas, he recently refused to make public details of 350 former gasworks, some of which are thought to be leaking cyanide, asbestos and cancer-causing chemicals. No doubt his concerns were proper environmental ones. He didn't want anyone disturbing the 5-legged rats that live there. Norma Major would seem to be the ideal person to sit on a Quango, since members aren't supposed to be married to anyone with political power. However, Norma says that she won't attend more than one boring meeting a day, so once she's had breakfast, that's her full quota. John, you've been lucky enough to draw the horse race totalisator board, and your 4 possibles are John McCreerick, Andrew Parker Bowles, News of the World's voice of reason Woodrow Wyatt, and Liz Hurley.
I can't recognise Liz Hurley. She's wearing more than I've ever seen her wear.
What a
of course, John McCrillick. Yes. John McCrillick would be disqualified because he knows something about horse racing. On the other hand, Liz Hurley would be eminently qualified for this quango or any other, I imagine.
Knowing as she does.
Knowing as she does a great deal about a great deal.
Well, it must be Woodrow Wyatt, mustn't it?
He's a rabid Tory who writes in the News of the World, so he's obviously on a quango.
Yes, I'll give you 2 points for saying the answer is Woodrow Wyatt. He's been collecting the inflated salary as chairman of this quango, which currently stands at £95,000 a year since 1976. So that's what an accumulator is. Racing expert John McCrirrick is not a member of this quango, one reason possibly being his recent admission, I love to sit down with a drink and a curry, farting like a hero. Which is lovely image for us all to ponder. And finally in this round, Ian, your quango is the London Docklands Development Corporation, and your options are Judith Mellor, David Miller's wife, Lady Cobham, David Miller's mistress, John Chuser, no connection with David Miller, as I know, and Hector from Hector's House.
I think this is... The David Mellor collection is obviously... Judith Mellor wouldn't have been given any jobs by Mellor. Not even 2 jobs. This woman, Lady Cobham, sits on millions of quangos. Not millions, about 20 different quangos. She is literally on everything. She's the quango queen. And Mellor just bought a house in Docklands, which will be useful. Maybe she can tart it up. Or vice versa. It's definitely her.
Yes, Lady Cobham was an obvious choice for the London's Docklands Development Corporation, as she has lived for over 20 years in the heart of Stourbridge in the West Midlands. The LDDC recently funded a housing estate in Beckton for 400 local families, a number of whom are now falling ill, possibly because it was built on a contaminated British gas site. Still, if they get no joy out of British gas, they can always complain to the Advisory Committee on Business and the Environment. Which bureaucratic nonsense means this quango round is finally put to bed, and the current state of play is that Paul and John are pretty behind with 6, whereas Ian and John are delightfully in front with 12. Round 4 exudes the unmistakable stench of a disinterred idea, as it's nothing short of our old favourite, the Missing Words round. Our guest publication this week is an Australian journal, the highly regarded, in Wagga Wagga at least, Goat World. So, first up is Mrs. T was what, admits Blair?
Married to man in the A-team.
Mrs. T was an abbreviation.
Someone to admire.
An admirable PM was the answer. Next, Bert's what brings despair to BBC?
Chauffeur-driven car every morning.
Existence. Is it from The Guardian? Is it Bert's Hospital?
No, virility symbol is the answer you're probably never going to get. Next, a tour through a goat's wonderful what?
Duodenum. It's a magic ride. They've got the fairy lights. It's a treat for the kiddies. They love it. It's either that or stomach.
It's a CD collection.
Is it World of Jazz?
Wonderful.
Oh, VE Day Memories.
The goats that won the war.
Yeah. We'll eat again.
No, stomach. Quite how you got that right answer, I haven't the faintest idea.
Well,
unless you read Goat World.
Yeah. Just for the pin-ups.
Next, wheezing Pavarotti pulls out a what?
Goat.
Just try and wipe that image from my mind.
Is it opera?
Dame Kiri Takano. Oh, sorry, that's not an opera, sorry.
No, just did the same joke with goat, anyway. Although not exactly the same, obviously.
It's an
Sorry.
opera.
If any of Dame Curie's relatives are watching, I do apologise. Opera is, in fact, the right answer. Well done, Paul. Next, suspended tour is what?
Cut down. Much against public demand.
Begged to come back.
Yes, I'll give you one for beg, because grovel gracefully is, in fact, the right answer. Next, Portillo moves closer to what?
Plastic surgery on lips.
Is it Portaloo? He's changed his name in stages. One letter a month.
Number 10 is the right answer. And finally, how I what in goats?
Revel.
Still managed to sing.
Continuing the theme.
How I came to believe in.
Found God.
None of these things.
Found a packet of cheese and onion crisps. Found £455.
Now I'm going to have to give it to you. How I started in goats is the correct answer. All of which uneducated guesswork means the end of tonight's fracas. And the overall position is that this week's bird brains are Ian and John with 15, whilst this week's bee's knees are Paul and John with 16. All that remains is to return to the scene of our caption competition. Ian and John, what did you think of for this?
Hello, dial a goat for Paul Merton.
Who put this goat on the table, you stupid sod?
Asks Pavarotti.
Yeah.
Thank you. Paul and John, this was yours.
Bypass scheme has design fault.
That's the Chernabus giant. Or is it the Cernabus giant?
Well, you tell us, Ian.
In Dorset, yes, it is. And they're just touching it up.
What about, is this a gravel path, or are you just pleased to see me?
Thank you. On which uplifting note, we say thank you to our panellists, Ian Hislop and John Fortune, Paul Merton and John Bird. And I leave you with news that police have released the last ever photo of Dave Stubbins, who successfully tunnelled out of Wormwood Scrubs last month. An archive photo is released of the first ever amusing car sticker. And there are unconfirmed reports that, far from being dead, Shergar may be living in Surbiton and holding down a steady job in the city. Good night.